Hello and welcome. You're watching The Money Show. I'm Kavita Thaplial. This show is your one-stop destination for all your personal finance queries and strategies. But then let's begin the show with a very important and a unique initiative. The beginning of this month often marks key financial activities, salary credits, bill payments, and planning expenses. But just as we plan for our expenses, it's equally important to plan for our investments. Now, to encourage this habit, SBI Mutual Fund, in collaboration with Times Network, is launching a nationwide investor awareness initiative, Bharat Nivesh, Behtar Kal. Now, the objective of this initiative is to promote the habit of consistent investing among Indians, helping them secure their financial future. As part of this campaign, we observe 4th of every month as a monthly reminder to ensure that you start your mutual fund SIP or ensure your existing SIP continues. So go on, set your reminder to invest consistently and stay committed to your goals for the financial well-being of you and your loved ones. And today, on this special segment, we'll be talking about why retirement can't wait. Is that right? I mean, I'm sure you must have heard about it so many times, but then how to actually implement it in your investment portfolio is the crucial action part. And I have with me Shilpa Ghore as an expert who will be helping you with this particular question in mind. Shilpa, hi, good evening and welcome to the show. All right, so let's just answer this question for our viewers. Why retirement can't wait? You know, retirement is the most ignored goal, and we see most Indians postponing it or postpone planning for it. We've got competing priorities over there, EMIs, children's education, often push retirement on the bottom. How can families balance these without compromising their own future?
Kavita, thank you so much for having me on your show. And like you very rightly pointed out, there are so many competing goals during our late 20s, early 30s, and even into our 40s. There are children whose school education needs to be taken care of. You've got your own education loans, home loans, car loans to pay. And you don't want to miss out on this period because there's also a time where you can actually take those vacations with your family. So there are always these competing goals that make retirement the least important point in your set of goals. So how do we get people to really prioritize this is definitely a very important question. And I think to be able to prioritize it, it's first important to come from a place of awareness and understand why this is important in the first place. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what retirement really means. You know, a lot of us have that resistance to say, Ki, I don't want to retire. I never want to retire. I want to keep working. There are folks who talk like that. And then there's another bunch of folks who say that I want to retire early. You know, I don't want to keep working all the time. So let me address both of these. One is, what is retirement? Retirement is just a point in time in your life where you can choose to stop working for money. And this is important for many people early on in their careers if they've got very short-lived careers, if they've got careers that are very quickly becoming irrelevant. But it's also important for people who will work till, let's say, 60, 65. You know, many folks will say, I want to work till I die. Well, that's great. But, you know, there is a point in time in your life where you would be incapacitated because of old age. It could be mental incapacity. It could be physical incapacity. So your income potential will go down with time. So I think it's important to first come to terms with that, because I think a lot of us don't want to think that far into the future and believe that such a time may arrive in our lives. Kavita.
All
So I
right,
think once
sure.
that awareness or the acknowledgement, yes, that this is important and I need to think about this, then I think it will start to become an important priority, even though it's so far away. And I would add to that to also say that there are so many people who, because of all these competing goals, they use a lot of their nest egg to pay for their child's college education, which runs into a few crores. Also financing an expensive wedding for their children, and then finally, when it comes to that age where they actually want to retire, they are left with sweet nothing. They have very less money, and then they start to delay retirement because you want to be able to live off that corpus for as few years as possible. So let me earn for a few more years so that I'm not really eating into this corpus. So all of these problems start to come in. So I think it's important to acknowledge that not having enough in your nest egg in your later years can pose a big problem. And another important thing that people say is that wear your oxygen mask first before helping everyone around you. So please remember that your children, they will come to a point where they will be financially independent enough to take care of financing their college education, partly financing even their marriage to some extent. So if it means prioritizing your retirement over everyone, your children's needs, I would say, think about it and go ahead and
Absolutely,
do
very
that.
important. Very important. And one more very important aspect of this entire retirement planning or retirement goal, Shilpa, is lifespans are rising, inflation is rising, and jobs are more uncertain with AI disruption. Now, how do these three factors change the way we should think about retirement today? In early retirement becoming a reality, by force rather than choice, what are your aspects on different methods to achieving these retirement goals and having different type of mindsets and planning for retirement now?
Right. First of all, it's important to understand that timeline in your head, right? So think of it like, so for a few of us who are in traditional careers, we will work for, let's say, 25 to 30 years. And then there's another 30 years where we need to live off that money we've accumulated into our retirement. That is one scenario. And the other, like you said, is an early retirement scenario where a lot of folks, especially in the IT sector today, are having to, their jobs are becoming redundant. So there is an early retirement scenario. Here the hope is that you are earning a much higher income. Let's say you're working for a company, an IT company in another country. That's often the scenario in India, and that means that you have a lot more income at your disposal to be able to save and invest and quickly accumulate this money. And in such a case, it may be more of a 20-40 situation where you're working only, let's say, 15 or 20 years, and then you have another 40, 50 years of your lifetime to support. So that is the number one thing. Second is busting an important myth that people have. So there's a myth, Kavita, that I can live off the interest and returns that my corpus makes for me. So let's say I'm sitting on a corpus of 1 crore and that makes a 10% return for me. And let's say I need only 10 lakhs in a year, that 10 lakhs is enough to take care of my needs. Well, guess what? Inflation is going to increase your withdrawals year on year. So even if you start with a withdrawal of 10 lakhs, that amount is going to increase year on year. You're not going to need just 10 lakhs. That same lifestyle is going to need more as inflation goes on. So it's important to understand that whatever corpus you create, you cannot live just off the returns. The purchasing power of your principal is going to go down, and your withdrawal is also going to increase because you're going to need that much inflation adjusted. So keeping these two things in mind, you need to build buffers in place, because remember that any corpus you build for your retirement, if you make inflation adjusted increasing withdrawals year on year, there will come a point in time where this corpus gets depleted completely. So what do then? You build buffers in other ways. You make sure that when you're building your calculation and you're coming up with a retirement goal, you're assuming a longer lifespan. As it is, all of us are living much longer than our previous generations, but we need to build in a few years extra. So let's say if you've taken 80 as your lifetime, look at your life expectancy more like a 90 or even 100 for some folks. You've got people in your family who've lived longer. So that is one level of buffer, Kavita. The other buffer is a high inflationary environment. Imagine if into your retirement inflation remains high for a few years at a stretch. That could also lead to increased withdrawals. So when you're running your retirement goal calculation and coming up with that number, make sure to take a higher inflation also into the picture and look at some of these, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, work out scenarios with different inflations and rate of returns. And the other part is, of course, the rate of return that you're assuming. Are you assuming a rate of return where all your money is parked in equity, or is all your money parked in FDs? These are very extreme portfolios to look at. So try to think of a more optimal asset allocation where you have some part of your money parked in fixed deposits and liquid mutual funds to take care of the first, let's say, 5 years of your retirement. And the rest of the money continues to grow and compound in equity and hybrid instruments, Kavita.
All right, interesting. Now, let's also figure this out or dissect this based on data. Your data shows 1 lakh becoming 30 lakhs in 30 years at 12%. Why is time the biggest multiplier in retirement planning? For someone starting late, say at 40, does compounding still work, or is the runway over here too short?
I don't think the runway is too short. I feel like starting early is one thing, starting now is the other thing. So if there are many of you who are starting into your 40s, remember that you still have a large part of your life ahead where you can continue to earn actively and start to accumulate your retirement egg. if you had to look at the horizon, we are sitting on roughly 20 to 25 years. So assuming a 65 retirement age for yourself, you've still got a good 25 years to let your money compound. And if you look at how equity markets have worked in India in the past, Kavita, if you take any seven consecutive years, equity, the probability of getting a positive return is pretty high. It's 99%. And if you give it around 10 years, then you get inflation beating returns as well from equity. So you have enough time. So look at equity oriented mutual funds as a way to now start accumulating, even if you're starting in your 40s, because you still have a long term horizon available to you, Kavita.
All right, let's also talk about shortcuts. You've cautioned against influencers, shortcut and thumb rules. Now, what's the correct way to calculate how much one really needs for retirement? You recommended something called as triangulating the number. What does this actually mean in practice?
So triangulating is saying that you're not depending on just one source.
Sure.
So let's say, for
Okay.
example, there's a influencer who tells you that, hey, you need 25 times your, your income, annual income as your retirement corpus. So 25 times your expenses. Or there's another influencer who tells you that it's 30x. Now, you need to, look at that with a little bit of caution and go a little deeper into the numbers. Try and understand what are the assumptions that have gone into this thumb rule. So this 25x or 4% rule, this is a rule of thumb, assuming a 30-year lifespan, assuming an asset allocation for United States of America, where we don't live, where most of us are, investing in domestic equities. So we need to look at what assumptions have gone into these rules of thumb, and you'll soon realize that they're not really built for India. Recently there's a paper that came out by Ravi Saraugi about the 3.5% withdrawal rule for India. That again has some assumptions around inflation rate. It has an assumption that you would have put 50% of your money in debt and 50% in equity. So what I'm saying is look at, understand what the assumptions are. And when I say triangulate, I mean trust at least three different sources. Go to one source, see what that source is telling you, go to another source, and try and triangulate from reliable sources. And I think the best thing that you can do is sign yourself up with a registered investment advisor who can actually guide you through that calculation, keeping your unique context in mind. Whether you're starting early, you're starting late, what kind of portfolio asset allocation you are comfortable with given your risk tolerance. And based on all these factors, an advisor can do the best for you. But if you're not one who's signed up with, you're trying to do this DIY, then I think, you need to triangulate. You need to speak to at least or trust at least three different sources before you decide what that calculation or that number should be. Kavita.
I think there's a lot more to be discussed, but then, I'm time bound out here. But thank you so much for being on this particular segment and helping our viewers at least take the first step and the first right step towards achieving their retirement goal. Thank you so much, Shilpa. Thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, it's time for a short break on the Money Show. But then post that, let's focus on your portfolio queries. And we'll be joined by Colonel Sanjeev Kovila, retired, who will be answering all of your portfolio queries. In case you want to ask any question, do WhatsApp us your queries, or you can also email us your questions. See you after this break.